Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. So today I'm just doing a little stream because I play Twilight 2000. That's the new game that's out by Free League Publishing on Fantasy Grounds. And what I did is I'm going to turn off my stream elements here so you guys can see it. But what I did is I created a theme for my games, so it looks kind of military-ish and kind of got like the Twilight 2000 theme and so forth. And I'm using a free community extension called MoreCore. And what MoreCore is, it's a rule set, a generic use rule set that has a whole bunch of fun little features built into it, and it can handle a lot of different types of role-playing games, and it comes with a lot of different features. The only problem with a generic rule set like MoreCore is that you have to figure out a way how you're going to use it, and then you have to teach everybody else how to use it in your games as well. So, what I've decided to do is I'm going to make this little stream, and I'm going to just go through the process of how the dice work, how the skills work, so that way if people do decide to play, uh, I don't have to keep repeating myself, and I'll have a nice little video up. And soon, this video will also be on my YouTube channel as well. So that way, anyone who wants to know how to use MoreCore and how to use the dice formulas and some of the tricks to use in the character sheets. So first of all, I also want to let everybody know that the character sheet template, sorry, I can't even speak right today. The character sheet template that I have is just a basic character sheet, and I have all the dice rollers already installed, and the character sheet's already been formulated. That blank looking character sheet is available on the Fantasy Grounds rule set forums, MoreCore forums. So you can drop over to Fantasy Grounds forums, go into the MoreCore forum, and yeah, you can just look for the character sheet there, and you can upload it. That way, you don't have to constantly create all the character sheets all the time, and all the dice rolling strings are already installed. Okay. So yeah, so first of all, I do also want to say I am really enjoying Twilight 2000 since I jumped in on the Kickstarter from Free League. They 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 make good games. They really do. Uh, you know, Coriolis was my first experience, which I love, and was actually one of the games that I was planning on running this starting January. And then, Alien, they made Alien. That's another really good game as well. And I was like, maybe I'll run that one as well. And then I got the alpha rules for Twilight 2000, and for me, that blew everything out of the water. Okay, so I jumped right on board using MoreCore. I wanted to play it. I wanted to figure out the dice rollers. And with Fantasy Grounds Unity, now that's a key thing. With Fantasy Grounds Unity, it allows you to do special dice expressions that work really nice, and it can do special things. So in order to do this, you have to use Fantasy Grounds Unity. So I need to be very clear about that. They have Fantasy Grounds Classic, which is the old school programming, but Fantasy Grounds Unity is the newest version, and that's something that you need to have for the dice strings to work. You can still use the themes or the character sheets, but the dice rolling abilities are not there. So as yeah, hey Keith, yeah. So all you got to do is sit back. If you got any questions, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to explain it. So, one of the things that we need to talk about is the character sheet. So, I'm going to bring up a template character sheet. And when I run MoreCore, any of the games I run on MoreCore, I try my hardest to get all the information to fit on the first page. I'm one of these GMs or players that I don't like going from page to page to page, clicking on things. I try to minimize it as much as possible. And so uh, for Twilight 2000, I managed to get the majority of the more important dice rollers and information on the front page. So you would load up the front page, or you open up the MoreCore tab that's right here. And on this, we have our character sheet. And the first 3 columns on the top are 3 of the attributes, and there's one more down at the bottom. I would have liked to have had all four of them on top. And what I might do now shortly is actually I might make these 4 blocks the designated attributes, and then I'll move the combat section up here, so just to keep it all kind of in one little corner. So the way it works is that you have your attributes, and you have 4 attributes in Twilight 2000. You have your strength, your agility, your intelligence, and your empathy. And with each of those attributes, you have skills that are associated with them. And the way it works, now first of all, I'm going to make my little this window a little bit larger so you guys can see it. So essentially the way it works, your skills are ranked from F, which is none, to A, which is the best. And your attributes are ranked from D, which are the worst, to A, which is the best. So there's a little bit of knowledge that you need to know. So a skill or an A attribute is ranked as a D12. So A equals D12. Anything that's a B level is B equals a D10, and C equals D8, and a D equals D6, and an F equals 0, nothing. All right. So this is a little bit of mindset that you got to get yourself into, because when you're creating the game, these letters are steps, you know. So if you're going to go up a step, if you have a B class or a B skill and you get a modifier, it'll make it an A. So instead of rolling the D10, you'll go up to D12. But we'll get more into that now very shortly. Now, what I will also talk about, as I reduce this back down to a normal size, is when it comes to your skills. So we're going to click on the, we'll go to strength. Now I'm going to add a little window here, and to make it a little easier to see. So in this case, we're looking at strength being our attribute and the 3 skills that are associated with that attribute. In MoreCore, you're going to see most of the skills, well, the attributes, we're just going to have one little die section here. Your skills will have 2, and anything that's related to a ranged weapon or a heavy weapon is going to have 3. And I'm going to describe what these boxes do here shortly. So each of these boxes right here, right now they all got 6s in them. What these boxes represent are the die type that you're going to roll. So if I was just to look at close combat, right now you see a 6 and another 6. So really that's 2d6. So if I click on this little button, if you watch my the dice roll, you're going to see 2d6s, they're going to roll. All right, let me do that again, a little bit clunky. So you're going to see 2d6s. And what happens is that it takes whatever are in those boxes, and these are the die types. So if I want to roll a d8 and a d10, I click on the boxes, I change the numbers to the die type that I want to roll, and then I would click on the dice number. All right, and it rolls that particular type. So that's something that we need to kind of understand as the game progresses, because these numbers will fluctuate up and down based on the difficulty of the skill that you're trying to do. So if you've got a lot of positives, those numbers are going to go up to different die types. If they're harder, they're going to drop lower. And some of them can drop to 0. So when I use MoreCore, what I get my players to do is I'll tell them to write down in each of their boxes the class and the die type of their regular skill. So once a character is created, and I'll just bring up I'll bring up an example and see if I can line this up here. What I ask them to do is I will get them to, up in the top of the level here, to write out the class of their attribute and the die type. So this is their default. So this guy here has a strength of A, or is a class, which rolls a D12. So that way the players can look at this and they know that a D12 is their die type that they roll for strength. In all the listings of the skills below that, all right, I ask them to do the same thing again. They'll go into they'll click on the star, and I'll ask them to go into their skill, and I'll get them to write in their class of their skill. So it range from A down to F, and their die type. So in close combat, for example, this particular character has a F0. He has no skill. So if you look at what's written right here in the box, he has a 12, which is his strength, and the next box is his, the 12 is his strength, and the next box is his skill, which is a 0. So whenever he rolls a close combat skill now, when he clicks on the button, he's going to roll a D12 and a 0. It'll always come up a 0. The only way to turn that off, and I'll explain that now shortly, make that a -1, and that turns off the die. But he will always roll a D12. Now, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. This is really, of all the Year Zero mechanics for Free League, like Mutant Year Zero and Coriolis and Alien. They're not difficult, they're not complicated, but this one is probably the more complicated rule sets that are out there for this one particular part alone. But once you understand how your attribute and your skill only roll 1 dice each, you add those and you roll those 2 dice together, and how they change depending on the modifiers, then the rest of it is easy. After that, it's how many times do you adjust your dice. So in MoreCore, I get all my players to, in the first box of all their skills, regardless of whether it's strength or agility, but in this one, I'll get them to always put 12. So I'll get them to put 12 in the first box here, and that is their die type. And then for their actual skill, I will ask them to put in their die type as well. So let's look at heavy weapons. This is the best one that's there. Hey, Jingo, thanks for dropping on. I'm just doing a kind of a tutorial on how to use MoreCore to play Twilight 2000. So I'm just showing the dice strings and how that works. So thanks for dropping in. So if we look at heavy weapons, right now his default skill is a D8. All right, that's a C. So, and his attribute is 12. So whenever he rolls the dice, I'm going to put that to the next. Whenever he rolls the dice, he's going to roll a D12 and a D8, and that's his skill roll. All right, he's going to roll the 2 different types. If the third number for ranged weapons and heavy weapons is your ammo boxes. Now I'll just go into what happens here. You put in the number of dice that you want to roll for ammo. So is not the first 2 numbers are always the type of die that you want to roll. The third number is the number of dice for ammunition, and you will always roll a d6. So if I wanted to make a heavy weapons roll, let's say we have a machine gunner, he's posted up somewhere over a field, and he sees a bunch of enemy infantry crossing the field, and he wants to unleash the place. All right, he knows that his particular weapon has a rate of fire of 6. So when he shoots, he can choose to put up to 6 ammo dice into the shot. And that is a whole mess of bullets that he's about to fire down range. So in this example, let's say it's a straight up roll, there's no modifiers, everything's just the way that it is. I will put a 6 into the third one, and now I'm going to roll my dice. And what happens is going to roll my attribute skill, or my attribute die, is going to roll my skill die, and is going to roll 6 ammo die. So now I am going to hit the roll button, and just watch what happens here. You roll a whole bunch of dice. It actually comes up showing your attribute and your skill die. All right, your attribute and your skill die right here. And then these are all your ammo dice. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, it does kind of work a bit like Star Wars. Jingo, I agree. Same mindset, I guess. So, whenever you make a ranged weapon roll or a heavy weapons roll, you need to add in your ammunition dice. All right? So, whenever you roll the dice, you get to add these numbers. So, the way the game works is anything that is a 6 is a success. All right? So, if you roll a 6, you are successful in whatever it is you need to do. Now, the benefit of being highly skilled is that if any of the die that you roll comes up with a 10 or higher, it counts as 2 successes. So having obviously a D8 or a D6 in a skill, you're not going to get any extra benefits of if you roll a 6. But if you roll a D10 or D12, if you roll higher than a 6, you get your success. But if it happens to be a 10 or higher, you're actually going to get 2 successes. So let's go back to our close combat here. And I'm going to make this let's make this a 12 as well. So right now when I roll my close combat skill, it's going to roll the D12 for its attribute and a D12 for its skill. Now, once this is written down here, this is just what its base is always is, so a player always know where it's going to be when they need to modify their values. But for the close combat, I'm going to roll the dice and let's see what happens. I get a 12. Oh, perfect. Look, I got 2 12s. That would never happen in game for me, ever, I can tell you. What happens is that you're going to see the dice roll, and up above is the formula. So it always defaults to show the formula that's being rolled. This is how you get your different colors. And what this does is that because the numbers are 6 or higher, they show up as green. Okay? And because that it's 10 or higher, it counts as a extra success. So Fantasy Grounds automatically tallies that as a 4 because it counts your successes up. Now, if I happen to roll a 1, which is bad in Twilight 2000, never roll 1s. 1s are always bad. It actually subtracts the number of 1s you have, and I can't figure out how to turn that off yet. Personally, I would like to be able to show me a number for all my successes and then another number for all the 1s that I would roll. But right now, if I was to roll 2 or 3 1s, it would subtract it from the number, okay? But right now, I know that I have 2 successes because these right here are green. Anything that shows up green, you see how this is a 5 and a 2 up here, they're not green. But because it's 6 or higher, the dice show up as green. So that allows you to tell right off the get-go that you have rolled a success. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of these die to a D1. So obviously, if I roll a D1, it is going to come up as 2 fails. All right, and it's going to show me a -2. All right, see that? So just remember that the first 2 boxes that you see in any of the line items for the skills will always be the die types. So I can put in any type of die here, a D1, a D2. I can put in a D100 if I wanted to. All right, let's put in a D100. roll the dice, and it's going to come up and show that it's a percentile based roll. Okay, so that is something that we all need to, as my players need to kind of understand, is that some players I know, and I've seen people do it in other games as well. When you have the formulas turned on, you don't need to go in here. Some players were going in here and trying to change the dice strings. You can't see that right here. So what some people were doing was that instead of changing the numbers in the formula box right here or in the parameter box, they would actually click on the little star, which brings you into the formulas here, and they would try to see this. And this right here is the formulas. All right. This is what, whenever I click those little buttons, this is what Fantasy Grounds Unity is telling it to do. All right. And because, see how it says D100 right now? It's rolling 1D100. Okay. So if I change this to a, let's change this back to a 10. You're going to see now that this says 1D10. So the way the mechanics work, now I've only just found out in the last couple of weeks, and as soon as I found this out, I was like, yeah, Fantasy Grounds Unity is the way for me to go. Because the way it works, whenever I make a dice roll, what this dice roll is telling me is that it's going to roll 1d10. Anything with anything, okay, let me try to rephrase this again. It's like reading some sort of code. 1d10. Successes 10 or higher equals 2. Anything with a success of 6 equals 1. And the F is anything that rolls as a fail. So what this is 1d10, successes of 10 or higher equal 2, successes of 6s or higher equal 1, and anything with a 1 equals a fail. So these are some of the codes that you put in. So if I wanted to roll, for example, let me go to my chat window here and I'll make it a little bit bigger. So you can see it. So 1D, let's see, 1D10. With anything that is a 2 or higher. Let's say whatever is going to be a 2 or higher on this dice roll is going to come up as a success. I put in an S, put in the 2. So whenever I now roll this, now I'm going to put this down in the quick bar, just so it's always there. So now what I'm telling is that whenever I roll 1d10, anything with a that is a 2 or higher is a success. So if I hit the enter button, it'll roll, and I got an 8. And see how it comes up as a success. So let's just say that anything that's a 2 or higher is 1 success, but I want anything that is a 3 or higher to count as 2 successes. Okay? Actually, let's make it 3 successes. So this is the old string right here. Right here, this is the old string. So now I want anything that's a 3 or higher to show a 3 success. All right. So now I'm going to go how do I do this? On the spot now. So anything that is a 1ds equals 2. Oh, I guess this is the way it's numbered, I guess. So I'm going to put in 1d10 with the hash mark 3. Okay. And S. S1. Now let's see if I did this right. I don't know if I did or not. One D10 times 2. Oh wait, no. 1D. Gosh darn it, diggity dang. 1DS5. So anything that's a 5 or higher is going to be a anything that's a 3 or higher is going to be 3 successes. So what I'm saying is 1D10 success is a 3. Anything that's a 3 or higher is counts as 3 successes. So let's see if this works. See if I did this right. Of course I roll a 1. Of course I do. All right, let's try this again. Yeah, okay. So what is my dice string is telling me is that a D10, a 3 or higher is a success, but a 3 counts as a 3 successes, essentially. So is the S, then the number tells you what number it needs to be a success, and then the hash mark and the number tells you how many successes those are worth. Okay? That's a little bit confusing. So that's why I always tell the players to don't go into the dice string and try to figure out what you need to do. All right, that's already done for you, and you can upload the character sheet, and these dice strings are already in there for you. And what you need to do is just change your particular die type right here. So that'll make your life a whole lot easier. Okay, yeah, that's when it comes to dice expressions, they're always a little bit strange. So that's that. So one of the other tricks that you can roll is that if I put a 0 in right here in both of these boxes, all right, it's telling, a lot of people say, oh, you put a 0 in, it's not going to roll anything. But what you're actually telling Unity to do is to roll D0s. And a D0 is going to come up with a 0 result, but it's still going to roll D0s. And it's always going to come up as a D6 square with zeros, and it's always going to show zeros as a result. Therefore, you're always going to get a -2. All right. So it's not necessary, but as long as you're aware of it, you can always tell your players or yourself that if you're not going to roll the die, if you're marked down to a 0, you can put in a -1, and if you roll the dice now, it's not going to roll any dice. All right. So if I put double ones in there for both of them and roll the dice, it's just going to come up as whatever, right? It's not going to come up. Nothing's going to happen. So that's how the dice rollers work using the character sheet in MoreCore. So if you get the character sheet template, all these dice rollers are already made for you, so you don't have to worry about changing anything. All you would do is change your titles on the top right here. And you can change it to what the base is. So now I want to talk about how the skills work, and this is probably the hardest thing for me to try to explain. It's just different, and once you understand the concept, it's second nature to you. But getting that initial idea of it first is a little harder. So what happens is your dies or your skills and your attributes are always adjusting in the game, okay? And I'm going to start off with, I'm going to use close combat as the example, and I'm going to give this guy a attribute score of a skill score of a D8, which is a, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one, which is a D8, which is a C. All right, and I'm going to give him keep his strength score. No, I'm going to change that to a B, which is a D10. So for all intents and purposes, this particular character, has a strength score of B and a close combat skill of C. So he will always roll a D10 and a D8. That's his base roll. If there's no modifiers, he rolls 2 dice, and they're a D10 and a D8. Okay? Now, I should move that over there. So, modifiers. This game is heavily based on modifiers. And I don't know if you've ever played older tactical type board games before, like well, one of my best examples is Car Wars, old board game called Car Wars by Steve Jackson Games, one of my favorite games of all times. It's all based on modifiers. So if you had to roll the hit number, you get +1 for being within close range, +2 for this type of sight, and you're going 30 miles an hour, you get -2. And then you always add up your bonuses at the end of it, and that's how that works. So that is kind of the same concept here with your modifiers. In this game, there is a bazillion modifiers to keep in mind. All right, that's why hey, thanks for the follow, GeekX. Much appreciate it. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, all the support, guys. You guys are fantastic right now. So how the modifiers work is, in most games, you get a +2 modifier. All right, you roll your dice and you add 2. That's how modifiers in most games work. But this one is different. Modifiers affect your skills and your attributes, and it raises or lowers your attribute skills. And that means it raises and lowers the types of die types that you're going to roll for your skill. So, for example, if I get a +1, say if through all the modifiers that I have, I get a +1, that's going to raise one of my die types up to the next level. So there's 2 particular rules in this. When you have a bonus modifier, it affects your highest attribute or skill first. If you have a negative modifier, it affects your lowest attribute or skill first. Okay, that's a very key thing to remember. That's probably the hardest thing. Yeah, I can understand that. So you have I'm just going to keep it simple, and you're going to get a +1 modifier to your close combat. Okay? So in our close combat, in this example, the first number I always put in as being my attribute, and my second number is always my skill. So this is our base number here. If I have a -1 modifier, what happens is I look at my lowest of the 2 numbers. So sorry, I'm getting confused. We're going to start with a +1. If I have a +1, you look at your highest attribute or skill number. So in this case, it's a 12. Now, you can't roll higher than a 12 in this game. So if I get a +1, my 12 is already maxed out. What I do, I would go over to my skill score, and that 8 gets increased 1 step up to B, which becomes a D10. So having a plus doesn't add it to the total value at the end of your roll. It actually changes your die types, and your dies increase in steps. So it goes from a D to a C, from a C to a B, from a B to an A, or whatever. So if I have a +1, I raise my highest one first. I can't go any higher. This is like math. This is like math class. Gosh, this is bringing me back to math. But if I have a D12, I can't go any higher, so I go over to my next, which would have been a D8. That now becomes a D10, and I roll my dice. All right. So here in this case, I got 1 success and 1 fail. So if I happen to have a +5, let's say something is insanely crazy here now, and I get a +5. What happens is that if my base rolls are a D12 and a D8, and I get a +5, I can only ever raise my highest die to a d12. I don't roll extra dice. I just roll 2. Okay, always 2 dice. So the 12 can't go up any higher. The d8 can go up 2 more steps to a d10 and to a d12. And that's as far as you can go. You can't do anything else. All right? So you can only ever upgrade to the maximum level, which is a 12 or a class A. All right? So then I roll my dice again, and this time I'm rolling 2 d12s. Now, when it comes to minuses, right, minus modifiers, this is where it affects your lowest number first. So let's reset everything back to its normal level. Right now, for example, we have our attributes set for a d12, we have our skill sets for a d8, and in this particular case, we are getting a -1. Okay, so because it's a negative modifier, after everything's been tallied up, it's a negative modifier, we look for the lowest number. And in this case, the lowest number happens to be the skill, which is 8, d8. So a negative modifier of 1 drops my my skill level down by 1 step. All right, -1 equals -1 step. So it goes from an 8 to a 6. So a -1 modifier brings it to a d12 and a d6. I roll the dice, bang, we're good. All right, lickety split. That seems pretty simple. But it's the negative modifiers that can really affect you, okay? Like I said, you can only ever roll no more than 2 dice. But there is cases where you can end up just rolling 1 die. And what happens is the negative modifiers. So again, we'll use my example. Our base stats are d12 and the d8, and in this case we're going to get a -4. Okay, we're getting a -4 modifier after everything's been tallied up of all our bonuses. We actually are stuck with a -4. So I need to subtract 4 steps of my dice, or the 4 different types. So that 8 drops to a 6. All right, and then what happens? Well, the dice is gone. All right, so the dice becomes, that's my second step, so that becomes a 0. All right, so then I have only 1 die left, so then that d12 is what's left. So that d12 becomes a d10, and then that 12 or that d10 becomes a d8. So if I had a -4 modifier, that's what happens. So you're always raising and lowering your die types with your modifiers. And that's probably the hardest thing to understand. Everything else in this game is relatively simple, except for the understanding or teaching the concept of how the skills and the attributes fluctuate in a game. Okay? It doesn't add to your total die roll or make it easier for you to roll. It changes your die type. So again, let's use another example. Let's just say we're going to go back to make this a 12 and we'll make this an 8 as our default. So you always subtract for, again, any negative modifiers, you always subtract from the lowest number first. And any positive modifiers, you always add to the highest number first. So in this case, just for the example, let's make everything a d8. This is let's say I have a class C in my strength and a class C in my close combat. All right, so everything's d8. And I get let's make it lower. Let's say I have a, let's say I have a strength of a D. Again, it doesn't matter what order the dice are rolled, but just to make the game easier, or using MoreCore easier, I always recommend using the first box to be your attribute and the second box being your skill. But so now if I get a +1, all right, I'm not adding it to my strength attribute now. I'm going to add it to my skill score. So instead of this being a 6 and an 8, it's going to become a 6 and a 10. All right, so you always add your bonuses to your highest number first, and your negative modifiers to your lowest number. All right, and that's the basic concept of it. But again, that is the most difficult thing in all of this. All right, D10 DC. I forgot my dyslexia kicked in here earlier. Change that up there. So when it comes to modifiers and using the MoreCore, all right, this little box right here, these boxes represent the die type when it comes to anything with heavy weapons, or over here, which is our ranged combat. All right, the third number is always your ammo die. But when it comes to your modifiers, your plus modifier and your negative modifier, you change the die type of the highest first for pluses, change the die type of your lowest die for minuses. And once you understand that concept, you're good. You're golden. And yeah, that's about it. So for understanding that, so you don't need to worry about going into the dice strings and bringing this stuff up here to look. You don't need to worry about going in here and changing anything here. All you need to do is change the numbers that are on the boxes that are here. So I got some exciting news. We've got a bunch of players that are getting together, and we're going to be playing another game this weekend on Sunday evening. That is, when's Sunday? Sunday is, what's the date? It looks like it's going to be December 20th at 8:30 Eastern. We're going to be continuing some one-shot adventures. The reason why we're doing one-shots starting off is because we're all new. Most of the people who I got the pleasure of playing with, a lot of them have played the old Twilight 2000, so I'm learning a lot from them and the concept of the game, because this is a different concept for me. But we're doing one-shot adventures for now, just trying to figure out the different ways things work. So our first game was just pretty much how combat worked as a very basic level. Our second game was trying out the travel rules and our the encounter system, how the encounters work, and tracking time. So that was our first two games, and those are currently uploaded on my YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look, check out the YouTube channel over there. And the third game, we're going to play a bit. I already told the guys this. They seem quite happy about it. I'm a little nervous what could happen. But we're going to throw them into the middle of an armored vehicle. And we're going to try out some of the armored combat rules, I guess. See how vehicles work and the situations around that. And then once we're going to play that game, and we'll see. We might get one more game in before the new year. It all depends on, of course, how everyone's schedules. I know how when it comes to Christmas time, it's always a little bit of a challenge getting people together. But here's the news. In January, starting January, our little band of merry individuals, merry men, we are going to start up our first campaign. So we got some ideas of what we're going to do, how we're going to handle it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to running a campaign. This is going to be my first campaign I've run in quite a few years. Usually I've been sticking to one-shots, and I've been teaching people how to play games, mainly 2D20 Conan with the wonderful crowd from Fantasy Grounds College. But this is going to be our first campaign. We're going to use Twilight 2000, which I am very excited to do. And yeah, so we're going to see what happens, and we're going to see how long these characters live, because although I've yet to have any deaths in the game, mainly I attribute that to the caginess of the players, because they know that this game is deadly. So I think they're being really cautious, which is good. But I'm looking forward to seeing how everything works. I'm looking forward to seeing what the guys bring into the game world, and we're going to go from there. So that is that campaign is called. I'm calling it Pilgrimage Through Hell, and that campaign starts right after the new year. So please follow follow the channel, follow my Twitter account, and you'll see all the updates and the when we're going to put on our shows and stuff like that. So one shots for the next probably one or two more one shots before the new year, and then we're going to jump into a campaign, and we're going to see exactly what happens. And just a reminder to everyone that the character sheet templates are available on the Fantasy Grounds forums. Just look for Twilight 2000. It is not themed, of course. But you can play it with MoreCore. You don't need to have the theme that I have here. Like I said, this is my own personal theme. But you can install and use the character sheets, and you guys can start, anyone can start playing in the wonderful world of Twilight 2000. World War III in a world gone bad really quickly. Guys, I appreciate you coming in and watching the stream. Thank you very much. And we'll see you guys Sunday evening here at 8:30 Eastern as we do some more Twilight 2000 goodness. All right, guys, have a good afternoon and take care. Thanks for watching.